Hey guys, Mustang here bringing another Dragon Ball Z Dokkan battle video, and so I'm finally getting around to doing a new LR tier list, including the units from part 2. I wanted to have a bit of time to play around with them, and obviously for those of you who have seen my summons or have been, are regulars on the stream and stuff like that, I was not able to pull the Int Broly, so I've been kind of waiting as we've been getting the easy A's and top grossing and all that kind of stuff. Been doing some more summons on the banner to see if I can actually finally pull a copy for myself, but so far still no luck. So I guess one thing to bear in mind, I always talk about this in my tier lists, that I base my rankings on the units based on my own experience with them in the game. And so of course, whilst I have done plenty of runs with the Broly team, using Int Broly as a friend for the leader skill for the team, that is obviously currently my only experience with running the unit myself. So if you think Broly is better than where I've put him in the list, maybe that's why. I do think his most optimal usage is going to be him on the team with the double tech Broly leads, and obviously that's not how I get to use him most of the time. So I mean, I do still think he's a good unit. He's in the top 10 list, obviously, if we're mentioning him at the beginning. So you'll see, obviously, where he comes into play here on the list. I've got a couple of honourable mentions I wanted to mention at the very start as well. Units that I don't think quite make the list. But of course, if you think any of them would potentially be at number 10 over the one that I chose, I probably wouldn't argue too much, since they are there to be honourable mentions. And of course, I say this all the time with these tier lists. At the end of the day, it's just my opinion based on, my experience playing the game. If you disagree with any of the placements, do let me know down below in the comment section in a civilized fashion, and I'm more than happy to discuss. I've had some good comments on previous tier lists going back and forth. I mean, there'll always be people out there, even when I say this at the beginning of the video, where someone will comment something like trash list, lol, or he thinks this guy's number 6, lol. And it's like comments like that, I just read them and just keep scrolling, because that doesn't give me anything to work with, right? So I'm interested to see your guys' lists if they differ from mine. If you think the placements are good, or you think some of them should be changed, do let me know down below, and give good reasons why, and we can discuss it. But like I said, when it comes to these lists anyway, I'm not super married to the list of this must be exactly where the units are, and if you think even one of them is in a different place, we're going to have arguments. Because I feel like if any units on any tier list, I feel like this even when I look at other people's lists, right? If you've got, say, let's use 6 and 7 as an example. If you've got units that are next to each other on the list, but you would swap them around, like 6 and 7 or 4 and 5, then I don't think that makes really a huge difference, right? Because they are roughly in about the same place, which means we're at least somewhat on the same page, right? And then of course, when it comes to even the top 3, I would say at this point, I feel are very interchangeable. But anyway, let's stop waffling and get on with the actual list itself. So I wanted to mention, like I say, a couple of honourable mentions at the beginning. I wanted to give a shout out to STR Future Gohan. I only really thought about giving this guy an honourable mention after we talked about him on the stream, I think this morning. The fact that this guy really is still an absolutely fantastic unit. He's gotten a full resurgence on some of these recent teams because of a bunch of leaders that he's had released for him, that give him the full 200% leader skill, like Beast Gohan and the physical trio. He links really well with the family Kamehameha Gohan, as well as the physical trio as well. So he's just a really, really good unit. If you're building a team for those characters and you're not sure who the last person to put on or the last couple of slots to fill, Future Gohan is a really, really good option. Post super attack, he has the damage reduction. He also does get the domain automatically activate, which that team, the team with the trio and Gohan, there's no other domain characters competing for having a domain active, and his domain just allows extreme class enemies to take more damage. So in certain events, that's going to actually buff the family Kamehameha or the physical trios like Miracle Punch. I don't know what the actual name for it is. That's what I've just started calling it recently. I think I've seen other people call it that. But I feel like this guy's an honourable mention. You could potentially put him at 10 over maybe some of the others on the list, and I probably wouldn't argue too much, just because of how good he is on the physical trio team, because he's already super good. Getting that extra defensive support makes him even better. So yeah, he gets an honorable mention. And then we have the Gogeta and the Broly. Now these guys, I think they made the very last like spots on the top 10 list when we were just talking about part 1. But these guys dropped off a little bit. I think their biggest weakness compared to some of the new units and how some of the newer units mechanics work is that these guys have the incredibly annoying countdown for their transformations and stuff being from their entry turn and not from the start of battle. But I mean, these units are still both very, very good, right? Broly works very, very well on the new Broly movie bosses team because of the way the domain and everything interacts with like the Int Broly, where you can use Int Broly's domain straight away. Then it wears out basically perfectly in time for you to then go ahead and use the AGL Broly domain, which of course not only transforms him and makes him more powerful, but also buffs all the extreme class allies on the team as well. So this guy's still really good, and obviously Gogeta himself still very, very good, still has probably the best target ability in the game, because of course unless the event disables dodge, his target ability makes it so that he literally cannot be killed, right? Because he can't take any damage. Whereas some of the other target abilities, even if you're not necessarily going to die, like you're not necessarily going to take damage, you have bosses that can stun and seal with their super attacks, which are then obviously super annoying. If you use the target ability, sure, you eat the hit and you don't die, but then your unit is sealed, and so they can't do damage for the turn, right? Because they don't get to do anything. So this guy definitely has the best target ability, works really well on the trio team, obviously has those Super Saiyan links and everything. So I think these three guys definitely deserve an honorable mention of still being among some of the best units in the game, just not in the top 10, like in my opinion, right? So let's move on to the actual unit that I put at number 10, and that is going to be the Tech LR Broly. Now, I don't know whether he should be higher. I don't know I probably would have to sit and think for way, way longer and really like break down into all the pros and cons as to whether I think this guy is actually better than the new Int LR Broly or not, but he is super, super good. Now, just like I say, this list is based on my opinions and how I like units and how I like to play the game. Remember back in the day when STR LR Cooler came out 2 years ago for the Worldwide Celebration, he was my favourite unit in the game. And that is because I am a big fan of units that can do big, crazy damage numbers. And, you know, they might die to a super attack, but to see the big funny numbers, that's what we like to see. And I mean, this guy, he is able to tank normals relatively well from some of these tough bosses, but he just absolutely deletes bosses. Like, I don't want to put too much stock in his damage and put him even higher, because some of the units that he would then be above, I'm not really sure if he should be above those units. But like, we have had some absolutely insane turns with this guy and the amount of damage that he can put out. Like, you know, not even with support units on the rotation, but I mean, I guess it's still supported by things like either the Int or the AGL Broly domain, having the links active and stuff like that. And like, I've seen turns without having to use any outside things like extra items and things like that. This guy just dropping like 70 to 80 million attack stat on his active skill turn. Like, he's just absolutely ridiculous. Super, super fun unit to use. Absolute must run on that like new movie bosses / Broly team, in my opinion. So I think this guy, because of that, I feel like there are multiple arguments you could make. Like I said, with the honorable mention guys, like there are arguments you could absolutely make for this Broly or Gogeta being better than this guy, but just because of what he brings to the team and how well he works on the team, can go in slot 2 or 3, obviously with that little bit of extra protection from like the Int Broly domain, the Int Broly revival. You don't have to worry too much about if he eats a super later on into the event, but there are certain stages where you don't even necessarily need to worry about him taking a super, because he's going to do so much damage to the enemy. The chances are he won't even actually get attacked. So this guy, I think, is absolutely fantastic. I mean, if nothing else, even if you wouldn't put him as high as actually being in the top 10, he is just a absolute W success, easy A for the worldwide celebration, especially when we think about Int TUR Broly and how his easy A was received in general by the community. Like, this guy is just absolutely fantastic. So I have him at number 10 currently. Like I say, I can see arguments for him dropping down a place based on certain factors, but I want to put him at number 10 because I think he's awesome. So then at number 9 we have the Int LR Broly. So this guy, like I say, my experience with him is a little bit more limited, only using him as a friend leader and stuff like that. So I have seen chunks. I've seen pieces of like what he can do and his true potential. I know I've seen a lot of people talk about him being potentially even underrated, because when you're using the team with the double leads, you obviously do have the ability to have the domain active for the first one. The domain runs out, then you use the domain for the second one. And obviously, while the domain is active, this Broly has guard, which obviously makes him a little bit stronger defensively. The revival itself, obviously very, very powerful ability. Like, it's one of those things where villain teams have really needed some of these characters with super top tier abilities that the superclass teams have. And we have been getting those with this celebration, right? Like, this team has a revival. We now have like target abilities. Like, there's a lot of really, really good stuff going on this team now. And Broly having that revival, I think, is definitely super good. He puts out decent damage for his main attack of the turn. Of course, his biggest issue, and I think a lot of people don't really like about him, is of course the fact he doesn't have any kind of like built-in additional or anything. So you get your big super attack off for the turn, and then that can be it, right? Like, that's all he does in terms of attack. But because he provides so much utility to the team, I do think he is still very, very good and deserving of being in a high spot on the team, or at least on the tier list. He is very, very good at the end of the day. And the team itself definitely is benefited by him being there. He may not be the best unit on the team, but the team gets so much extra out of him being around that I think he definitely has a lot of value. And I mean, the thing is, for people who think he's potentially better than what I'm suggesting, I mean, he could be. I do think, like I said, his optimal usage is being on the team with double tech Brolys, but at the end of the day, I do still think he's top 10. I think he's very good. Like, let's bear in mind, even a unit who is at the bottom of the top 10 list, I'm still saying that they are essentially one of the best units in the game, right? I do like all of the units on this list. So if you think Broly should be higher, let me know your thoughts down below. I think there's a lot of interesting comparisons. I honestly, I wasn't sure, because I don't know if I just don't like this unit as much as everybody else, even though I know his potential. But I was, for a moment, tempted to put him over Tech UI Goku, but I feel like that would have potentially caused a civil war in the community. I don't know. But when it comes to this guy, so I have him at number 8 now, which I think a lot of people will think is quite low. But bearing in mind what I said with the last tier list as well, if he started off as the transformed UI Goku, he would probably be in the top 3. I don't know if he would necessarily be number 1 now, although he probably would, because turn 1, guaranteed dodge everything, counters everything, and then from the following turn after that, has like 77% chance to dodge and can counters everything. Like, he's ridiculous. So maybe he would be number 1, and of course the domain as well. So maybe he probably would still straight out just be number 1 if he started off transformed, but he doesn't start off transformed. And the base Tech UI Goku, whilst he absolutely is not bad in any way, comparing his base to everybody else on the list, I don't think he should be higher than them. Now, obviously, the problem is when it comes to making a tier list and trying to evaluate, like, is this unit better than this unit? We do have to think about the unit as a whole, right? So, for example, I could probably quite easily argue, I would say that this guy is better than the base Tech UI Goku, but is obviously not better than the transformed UI Goku. So in that instance, like, who then do you put? Like, where do you position them on the list, right? Because Int Broly, I think, is better than base Tech UI Goku, but then once you transform Tech UI Goku, he's probably one of the best units in the game, if not the best. So it's difficult really to think about where to put this guy on a tier list, just because the difference between pre and post transformation is so dramatic. Like, it's none of these other units have like an active skill or a transformation where they would then jump from, like, I've got this guy at 8 and then potentially jump to 1. Which is certainly an interesting position for him to be in, right? He's definitely a good unit. Like, don't get me wrong as well. I'm not trying to underrate the base form version. Like, he is very good, but I do think that his base lets him down a little bit. At 55%, which is what I have mine, he is obviously still good, but if he's not dodging, he certainly can be a little bit of a liability. The domain massively buffs the rest of the team, so having that bit of support is really good. Reps of Universe 7 is definitely up there with being one of the best teams in the game. I think if we talk about tiers for teams, Reps of Universe 7 could be in the highest tier. It wouldn't be the best, I don't think, but it would probably be in the highest tier. So he's got a lot going for him. Let me know what you guys think. I know, especially compared to the next two, because these guys are all kind of grouped together on the list, right? So Tech UI Goku's number 8, and then at number 7 we have the Int Blue Evolution Vegeta, and number 6 we have AGL UI Goku. So people could probably argue that these guys are all kind of close. I do think, especially with the extra buffs they get on the first turn, like these guys are hands down better than the Tech UI Goku in base. And then of course once he transforms, not only does he become insane, but he also buffs these guys quite significantly. So the team itself is certainly very interesting and very powerful. So I think because these guys are as good as they are, they should be above this guy, because in shorter events as well, like you might even only get Tech UI Goku out for like 1 or 2 rotations, which, you know, he's still going to be doing a lot. He's going to be contributing a lot on those rotations. But these guys, their impact is felt like right from the start. Vegeta has guard first turn, can tank really well, builds up that revival really, really easily. So it's not much of an issue for him to be kind of protecting the team as well with that revival. And then of course UI Goku, I mean, I cannot state strongly enough how ridiculously powerful guaranteed dodge on the first turn like really is, right? Because as long as the event doesn't disable dodge, it just means on the first rotation you can't take damage. So it becomes very difficult to lose in an event where you can't take damage in the first turn. Now obviously you can still lose later on down the line, but after that turn 1 with the guaranteed dodge, he still has a relatively decent chance to dodge throughout the rest of the fight, 77%. He's hitting quite hard. Both these guys obviously post EZA hit a lot harder, especially for getting the 24 key, get the crits. Like these guys do a lot of damage. They are very good. So Universe Survival Saga, that specific team, kind of takes up this big chunk in the middle of the board with 6, 7 and 8. And again, like if you wanted to switch Goku and Vegeta, I tried to explain it in the last video. I like Vegeta more because of some of the teams that I run that I can use him on that I don't use the Goku on, like the Tech Vegeta team and stuff like that. But I think when it comes down to breaking down everything they do, I would probably still put UI Goku over Vegeta just because of that turn 1 guaranteed dodge. It just means he's going to age so well. Like even if we get more difficult, like if we go back to the sort of meta with the Dismal Future Red Zone, which I know most people would be dreading, where fights are just really, really hard in turn 1 and you can get one shot by a super attack on the first turn, then obviously units like UI Goku who can't take damage on the first turn would obviously be incredibly valuable in that kind of meta. So I think he probably just beats out Vegeta by just a little bit, but that is 6, 7 and 8. So now we are going to go into the top 5. I've had a little bit of a shuffle around since my previous ones, but we have at number 5 Cell Max. So Cell Max, very, very good still. Was crazy on release, very, very good now still. Like he's lasted this long at the top of the list because he's so good, and it's only really because some of the newer units that have come out in this celebration are so ridiculous that he's moved like down to 5. I mean, he's still in the top 5, but I mean on release a lot of people had him at number 2, only behind like Beast Gohan, right? So this guy's super, super good. Now on the Broly team, until we got the Prime Battle Bio Broly, he was lacking in terms of like Big Bad Boss's partners, but he doesn't even really need that, right? Like he's so good. When he's fully built up, his defense is crazy, especially post super. On the active skill turn, even without Big Bad Bosses, like mine has 2 dupes, and the lowest I've seen his defense, and I think this is him not even fully built up, no Big Bad Bosses, but with the active skill, like the lowest I've seen is like 9 million defense, which in terms of global, there's still no super attacks in the game that can actually do damage to him with 9 million defense, right? So, you know, I've seen him with Big Bad Bosses active, with my one again being with 2 dupes at sort of like 13, 14, even 15 million defense. But even as the bare minimum, he's rocking a level of defense that means it's pretty much impossible for him to take damage. He does a lot of damage, can do a lot of attacks, so he is really, really good, and still deserves a spot in the top 5, I think. So then we move on to number 4, which is Tech Broly from part 1. This guy's still absolutely fantastic. As I said when talking about Int Broly, I think using him as the leader of the team and having 2 of them is the best way to go. Because obviously on turn 1, he's essentially like an invincible tank. And then when you get to the next turn, you transform. He's still pretty much untouchable. Then the next turn you use the active skill, so not only does he then have the buff from the active skill, but he still has the extra damage reduction because it's still within that turn condition from his initial transformation into legendary Super Saiyan. And so yeah, he works as a slot 1 tank, like basically the first 3 rotations almost guaranteed. Like he basically just doesn't take any damage. And of course, you know, when he does transform into the legendary Super Saiyan Broly, he's doing tons of damage. He's doing an AoE, which is not necessarily super relevant for a lot of the current like end meta level events, but definitely can be useful. It's kind of fun for like the Gohan, Super Saiyan 2 Gohan Blue Zone, where obviously you get the stage where Goku joins the fight as well. And then of course it just doesn't matter because Broly's just doing an AoE and hitting both of them regardless. So yeah, he's really, really good. Super good leader for the team. Slot 1 tank. I talked about it a little bit in, I think it was the video going up about the physical trio earlier today. But like one of my favorite archetypes for a unit who's supposed to be the leader of a team is for them to be a slot 1 tank, because then you can build the rest of the rotations however you want. Whereas if you have the leader of the team as a unit who pretty much has to be in slot 2, because maybe they don't quite work as a floater because they only have buffs for 3 turns or whatever it is. Like this guy gets the damage reduction extra after transforming for 3 turns, which means if you transform him and float him off, he only has that extra damage for that 1 turn, and then when he comes back he's lost it. So he's a unit that wants to be on rotation, but he's more than strong enough to be in slot 1, and that gives you freedom to build the team with a little bit more variety of whatever you want to do, right? So this guy, absolutely fantastic. Number 3 on the list, or number 4 on the list, I should say. And then when we get to the top 3, so I have actually changed the very top of the list from the last time, obviously because one unit is actually new. But just based on the amount of experience I've had now with the units, different teams, trying out other units, because when I make my tier lists, I probably should have mentioned this right at the beginning, but when I do my tier lists, I do try and base the units on their individual performance, but I do have to think about, especially with a lot of these units now, like what they're providing to the team, because like support is really important. Like the unit themselves has to be really good, and I don't try and use, like, you know, there was tier lists going around back in the day when Orange Piccolo was around and Superhero was probably the best team in the game, and it was like, well, any unit that's on the Superhero team is automatically above like other units on a tier list because they can just be protected by Orange Piccolo. Like, I don't go that far with these kind of things, but things like support and how to protect the rest of the team are things that I think are definitely worth considering when it comes to like who's the best unit in the game. So for me, at number 3, we have the family Kamehameha Gohan. Now, I know some people think this guy's number 1. I could definitely see arguments for it. I should absolutely mention again, even though I mentioned it at the start, not only am I perfectly happy with arguments for moving some of these characters around, when it comes to the top 3 specifically, these 3 units that we're about to talk about, I feel like they could be in any order. As long as these are the top 3, I would probably agree with you, right? Like, rather than giving any sort of arguments, like if you say, oh, I think the one you've got at number 3, this Gohan, should actually be number 1. Number 1 should be number 2, and then number 2 should be number 3. Like, I would probably just be like, yeah, okay, because I can see the arguments for each of these top 3 units being number 1. So obviously my purpose here now is to explain why I have put them in this specific order. So Gohan is really, really good. Before you put him into his standby, he obviously isn't a slot 1 unit, which is fine because one of his best teams is to be run with the physical trio who are a slot 1 unit. And then of course when you go into his standby, which is basically free, it has such an easy condition, it's ridiculous, then he can be a slot 1 tank. Now, when it comes to really getting down to the nitty gritty of like how to put these top 3 units in order, we have to look at every single factor of the unit. So one thing I will say compared to the other 2 units is his leader skill is not the best, right? Kamehameha is a team that has obviously had a lot of buffs recently and will continue to get buffs over time because obviously multiple new Goku, Gohan, and like Gogeta even, like Vegito even, like some of these units are going to have are going to be on the Kamehameha category, I should say. So this is a team that does get buffed quite a lot. But with double Gohan leads, you obviously then have to make sure that you do have strong slot 1 tanks in order to go with him. Because and like I say, until you get to the next turn and he goes into the active skill, he can't fulfill that role. So the physical trio could be one of them, but then you have to bring somebody else to potentially be a slot 1 tank on the other rotation. And of course you can only use one standby for the Gohans at the same time. So I feel like it's best to just have one of him on one of his 200% leads rather than running his team. Now, obviously, he's very good, and the Family Kamehameha is cool, very powerful, does a lot of damage. Even in his untransformed form, he does a lot of damage. Like, I still think he's super, super good. I could see arguments for him being the best unit in the game, but I think what it comes down to when we talk about the top 3 is out of the top 3 units, if you were to say to me, like, out of these 3 units, if you could only have one in your box, which one would be the most valuable one to have? I personally don't think the answer is Gohan, which is why he's at number 3. So obviously still very good, but I have him at number 3, and I can see the arguments for being him at number 1, like I said. So now we move on to the last 2, and this is where the major change is for me based on the last list, which you can now probably guess, I'm sure, is that I now have Beast Gohan at number 2. In the last video, I put him at number 1, and I talked about some of the things that we've mentioned already, like, you know, abilities to protect the team and stuff like that. The target ability, still incredibly good for this Gohan. You know, only Gogeta has a better one in my opinion because of the guaranteed dodge. It is kind of annoying when you're running Beast Team and you're doing any of these events where the boss can stun or seal. And so you use your target ability. Gohan obviously tanks it, like he doesn't die, but then he gets stunned or sealed and then he can't do anything. And especially on his team, depending on the build, of course, there are multiple different options, but on his team, he is one of the main damage dealing units. So if on the active skill turn, he's then actually unable to do any damage, then that certainly can be a little bit annoying. So he's, of course, still fantastic. I mean, I'm saying at this point, he's basically the second best unit in the game, right? So certainly not underrating him at all. His leader skill is very good. Superheroes, of course, still one of the best teams in the game. We talked about like team tiers a little bit earlier when we talked about Reps of Universe 7. This one absolutely would be in that highest tier and probably above Reps of Universe 7 in my opinion. But remember his secondary ability as well, Entrusted Will or Movie Heroes. So there's a lot of solid units that get his full 200%. But yeah, he's a very, very good unit. The unit super we don't really need to worry about. It's nice to have it, but he's not losing out on any of the stats from his attacks or anything. Certainly still a very, very good unit. Definitely hasn't aged really at all. It'll be interesting to see tomorrow when the new stages for the Blue Zone come out, if any one of them becomes the new hardest stage in the game and how well Gohan will do in that event. But more than likely, he will still be very, very capable. So I have Beast Gohan at number 2, which of course means that we then have the physical trio at number 1. Now again, I think I said in my last tier list, the thing that just cinched it out for Gohan to be number 1 last time for me was that ability with the target skill. But since then, I've gotten to use these guys a lot more. I did a whole series of videos using random older units on their team to take advantage of the buff that they give with this ridiculous 77% defense for 2 turns, which of course, if you're running double leads, you then have from both of them, which essentially means that support is up like every turn. And yeah, these guys are just absolutely ridiculous. Like, I've seen Rainbow Friend ones tanking almost any super in the game on global from the different events that we've been doing using these teams in slot 1 for like double digits. And then of course that's not even counting the active skill or the standby turn where they become the standby Goku, who is basically invincible at that point. Just this unit is super, super good. They support the team a massive amount. Their leader skill is really good. All Out Struggle, Super Saiyans or Power of Wishes. Power of Wishes means you can run units like Bulma, who pretty much has had a resurgence thanks to being on this team and the support that she gives, which is super good for the fact that this team has these guys and the family Kamehameha Gohan that both have standby abilities that need to charge up with orbs. So having Bulma on the team not only as a unit that gives support, but has an active skill that creates tons of orbs is obviously super good as well. I think these guys are great. Like, the biggest W of the worldwide celebration is the summonable units. We've talked about how everything else has been kind of disappointing with like the pacing and the amount of events and all that kind of stuff. But the summonable units have all been really good. I mean, like, even though Int Broly is low on the list and maybe lower than some of you guys maybe think he should be, but like all of the worldwide celebration units are in this top 10 list and 3 of them are in the top 5. So these summonable units have all been really good. Very much been enjoying using all of them. And yeah, for me, these guys are at number 1 just because of the sheer amount. And it goes back to what I was saying when we talked about Gohan. When I said about if you could have any one of these 3 units in your box, which one would you want to have the most? I don't think it's Gohan. You could argue Beast or the trio, but I honestly think right now, with some of the units that we have available in the game and the support that these guys give, the way they rejuvenate some of these older units who were just starting to be just that little bit too weak defensively, and were becoming a little bit of a liability against some of these tougher bosses. These guys make those units runnable again against some of these tough boss fights. So I think personally, that's the way I would boil it down. Like, they're all super good. Like I said, we're really getting down to like splitting hairs here, but the way I would put these guys at number 1 and Beast at number 2 is if you asked me out of these 2 units, if a player could only have one of these 2 units in their box, who would be the best one for them to have? I genuinely do think it's these guys, because if you're a newer player as well, or someone who's been playing maybe a short while but are free to play or spend a small amount, these guys massively buff up everybody else on the team and make the whole of the rest of the team better. So whilst this guy does have an ability that can protect the team on one of the turns because of the target ability, you can still have other units on the team who are just not quite at that level. Whereas these guys boost everybody else on the team up to that level. And I just think they are an absolutely brilliant unit. Super well designed. Love using them and all the different team combos. So for me, they are at number 1. So yeah, let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. If we switch over to like the full tier list view here in order, there you can see in reverse order, not including the honourable mentions because they get cut off at the bottom, which was Future Gohan, Physical Gogeta and AGL Broly. So 10 Tech LR Broly, 9 Int Broly, 8 Tech UI Goku, 7 Blue Evolution Vegeta, 6 AGL UI Goku, 5 is Cell Max, 4 is Tech Broly, 3 Family Kamehameha Gohan, 2 Beast Gohan, and number 1 is the Physical Trio. It's kind of funny that the top 3 units are all involving Gohan, and 2 and 3 are both STR Gohans as well, which is kind of fun. So let me know what you guys think down below in the comment section. Like I said, I'm more than happy to hear disagreements and try and persuade me why units are in the wrong spot, but do it in a chill way, and I'm more than happy to respond to all the comments. But let me know all your thoughts and what your personal top 10 LRs list would look like down below in the comments. So that is going to be it for the video, guys. This has been the Masked Ningen. Smash that like button, subscribe to the channel if you are new. Check out all the links down below, and I will see you all again soon. Have a good one.